So I've had the DJI Neo for 6 months. I put it through its paces, and I wanted to do a video on the 5 things that you could consider or should consider if you're looking to purchase one of these. So without further ado, let's hit it. Number 1, video limitations. What I mean by that is this will shoot in 4K and up to 60 frames per second, but not both at once. So if you want to shoot beautiful 4K video, it only gives you an option at 30 frames per second. Now, if you're new to video, what that means is I like to shoot 60 frames per second because I do like sometimes to have the flexibility of like a slow motion, cinematic, sweeping shot. And if you have the ability to shoot in 60 frames per second, that will look like a smooth, sweeping, slow motion shot, whereas 30 frames per second will look a little bit choppy. And if you want to learn more about the different flight modes on this and which option you should set this in your settings for, I have a video that I've already done. It's linked right up here. So if you're wanting to do 60 frames per second, the only option to do that in with this drone is 1080p. So you do lose a little bit there on video quality, but at least it's an option. And for a drone that's 199 bucks, give or take, it's still pretty great. There is a third option to give you a 9:16 crop. So for social media, that will give you, again, 1080p. It'll also give you the flexibility of that 60 frames per second. So it is, it's a scenario where you do have options. They're just limited, more so than your typical DJI drone. So that kind of leads me into number 2. The camera doesn't flip when you're doing a 9:16 portrait mode crop, meaning if you're shooting for social media like Instagram, Twitter, well, when I say Twitter, TikTok, if you're doing that 9:16 crop, it's a digital crop. So this camera doesn't flip like they do in the mini series where you're not actually doing a digital in-camera crop. It actually does flip the camera for you, which flipping the camera is the most ideal because you're not having to rely on digitally doing it inside the camera. That's not a big beef of mine, but I think it does lend to the fact of why you're not able to get 4K at 60 frames per second with the 9:16 portrait mode. So it's enough of a griping point that I hope that would be addressed. Just to consider, if you are shooting for social media a lot, you are relying on the 9:16 capabilities on this, it is a digital crop. You cannot flip this. So, moving on to number 3. This is a lot more of a video first camera, meaning that the buttons on here where you're able to shoot this without a remote control. You can literally just select your flight mode and palm launch it. It'll go and do a droney or circle or spotlight. It's going to shoot all video, right? I was thinking that maybe I might be able to do like hand gestures that I wanted to capture still frames. It's not as simple as that. If you want to take pictures with this, you're really going to want to pair it with your phone, and you're literally going through and let's say, for instance, you wanted to take a couple stills while it's doing a flight mode, like it's halfway through a circle. Not possible. You can't change things when it's doing its flight mode. It's there doing its thing. So it's more of a video camera first, as opposed to a still frame camera. It's not that big of a deal for what I use it for. I really enjoy taking this on hikes. I'll throw it in my pocket. It literally fits in my jacket pocket without a remote control. Palm launch it and get some really cool videos out on some overlooks. It is what it is. It does a great job at that, but if you're planning on taking a bunch of stills with it, it is a bit more of a hassle. You are having to connect it. You're not able to do hand gestures 4. Beyond this thing being durable, meaning that it has the blade covers surrounding this, which you can take off. With the DJI Flip, you can't, but with these, you can take them off. I haven't had a reason to take these off because they are so light, but I haven't, why? It gives added protection that I definitely want because this has crashed a bunch. Just me wanting to do, let's say, circle and not realizing that it's going to go further than I had room for. But when it crashes, it is so light that it hasn't done any damage to it yet. But beyond that, beyond the fact that it is tumbled downstairs and smashed into sides of buildings and keeps on going and without even like flinching, this thing has been through some of the most extreme weather. So I recently went to Iceland, and we went to the Highlands in Iceland, which is super remote, and it happened to be during the worst snowstorm that Iceland has had all year. And I'm talking like 90-mile-an-hour winds that would just kind of come out of nowhere. Snowing, sleet, rainy, like that sludgy snow kind of stuff. I put it up in some pretty windy conditions, not the 90-mile-an-hour windy conditions, but pretty windy conditions in the snow, in the kind of slushy snow, in sub-freezing weather, where it would, kind of come back down and it's kind of coated in ice, kind of thaw it out, scrub it off, and try to dry it out with a fire because we're camping in a cabin in the middle of nowhere with only a fire in the cabin and no running water or anything. This thing is still alive and kicking. It didn't give me any error messages, and the content looks great. I'll post it on my Instagram. But the fact that it not only can take a beating, it can also fly in conditions that are super severe. And a side note on that, I also brought my DJI Mavic 3 Pro, flew it in the same conditions, which I was very frightened to do, but we're taking a trip of a lifetime in the middle of nowhere. When am I ever going to be able to get this again, this kind of footage? I took it up and did it, and even the Mavic 3 Pro, I was worried about with all the extra technology in it. This thing was like kind of a block of ice with the blades covered in ice, and the lens, kind of a sheet of ice over the 3 lenses, and it thawed out and it was fine. I got like one error message, beyond the one that said, hey, this wind's too heavy. I got another error message that said like, hey, we think the blades need to be replaced. I think it was because there was so much ice on them. But when it thawed out, it was fine. So if you're worried about like flying your drone in, kind of not ideal, pristine conditions, I was in that camp. I was like, no, it's not completely sunny. It looks a little cloudy. It might get a little wet. I don't want to damage my drone. I've put these through the paces and they came out great. They still work without any issues. So it doesn't affect the drone. So far for me, I'm not sponsored by DJI. I'm not speaking for DJI. These are not graded for extreme conditions that are sub-freezing. I'm just saying that if you find yourself in that scenario where you really don't want to miss the shot, but you're thinking, this is not going to work because it's going to destroy my drone, it probably won't. Both of these drones have gotten pretty soaked and frozen over, and they were fine. So that leads me to the 5th and final consideration for the Neo. This does not have a memory card slot, and that is a little bit of a kind of a head scratcher for a lot of people. It does have enough memory on board to give you about 15 solid minutes of good high quality 4K footage, depending on if you're shooting in all 1080p or versus 4K. It's going to vary about how much time you'll have in the drone, but just know that you're not going to be able to go out and shoot hours and hours of footage and then like just, you know, leave it and just keep letting it build over time. This thing needs to be offloaded. So get it off of this as fast as you can. That way you know it's safe, because you don't have a ton of extra storage. The last thing you want to do is be flying it and all of a sudden you get an error message that says, oh, I'm out of space. That's the 5 things I would consider before purchasing the Neo. I would say overall, for the price point and for what it is, I wouldn't trade this for anything in my kit. For a lot of scenarios, especially for hiking, there are certain scenarios that I just cannot really get the footage. I don't want to bring something as heavy as the Mavic 3 Pro, sync it to its controller, make sure that I'm in the right airspace. This is super convenient. It fits in your pocket. Where there are camera limitations on, you know, video, it's fine for what it is. It captures what you need. And I'm a big believer in, you know, it's all these features, functionalities, you know, the luxuries of shooting in 8K or whatever it may be, that's only as great as it is practical. Because if you aren't able to bring the drone up or bring the camera out because it's too clunky, then what good is it? So yeah, I would be just fine shooting on 1080p and get the shot versus something that's got a lot more features that I'm not able to get out there because it's too clunky. So this is an excellent drone. I'm not sponsored by DJI. I'm not sponsored by anyone. This is just my raw, you know, unfiltered opinion. I love this little drone. I've caught a lot of really great memories on it, and probably going to get another one just because I do like to just beat the heck out of this thing as far as in the weather, and it does kind of end up smashing into stuff. So if you like this kind of content, please let me know in the comments below. I'll be making more videos like this. Please subscribe. Talk soon.